You're listening to Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan.
Welcome to Women's Media Center Live. I'm Robin Morgan. Such terrific guests today. We start with Christine Lahti, who is an actor whom you have seen and loved on stage and films and on television, and who's embarking on a whole new career as a writer now. And then we speak with Dr. Robin Murphy, who brings a woman's touch to disaster robotics, robots that go into disasters and save people. And last, Dr. Patricia Bell-Scott is here to talk about her new book, The Firebrand and the First Lady, which explores a most unusual and wonderful friendship. But first, we need to go inside the headlines. This is way inside the headlines because it's about who decides what the headlines, in fact, what the news will be. This is, after all, Women's Media Center Live, the daughter of the Women's Media Center itself. So we have to take on our colleagues in the media, not so much the journalists, but the suits, the guys upstairs in the corner office. Oh, I could lament, and I have done, the slide in journalistic practice, including the apparent disappearance of the follow-up question, or the frequent use of false equivalency, reporting a statement that the moon is made of green cheese and another saying no it's not, as if they were equally true, or the avoidance of saying to a candidate simply, "But sir, that's just not true." It's not coincidental that the most challenging interview yet done with Trump has been by a Wisconsin extremely conservative radio talk show host. It was a one and done, as it's called, because the host knew he had only one chance ever and did not need to avoid offending Trump, who might then refuse to be interviewed by him again. My point is that journalists are not behaving, for the most part, as we or they themselves would like them to, because of pressure from upstairs. So back to the boys in the corner office. At the recent Morgan Stanley Technology, Media, and Telecom Conference in San Francisco, CBS Executive Chair and CEO Les Moonves, while calling the presidential campaign a circus full of bomb throwing, said he hopes it continues because of the ad money that Trump and his GOP competitors are bringing to CBS. Moonves said, quote, "The money's rolling in and this is fun. I've never seen anything like this and it's going to be a very good year for us. Sorry, it's a terrible thing to say, but bring it on, Donald. Keep going." Close quote. This is the head of CBS, the network whose news department once was the gold standard in television reporting. Now, Moonves can charge as much or more for ads during Republican debates as during the Super Bowl because of ratings. So as he himself blatantly puts it, quote, "It may not be good for America, but it's damn good for CBS." Period, close quote. For shame. And for shame that all the networks, including cable news, permit Trump to phone in interviews when none of the other candidates do the same. Apparently it's too inconvenient for Trump to deal with a remote camera crew sent to wherever he is. It's too inconvenient for him to have to puff and spray that ornate wave thing with his orange hair. So he just phones it in, even to such distinguished national programs as Meet the Press. And Meet the Press allows him to get away with this. Only him. For shame that all 5 major television networks agreed to Trump's demands for how he permits coverage of his rallies. Journalists must enter their designated pens 15 minutes before he speaks and stay there until he's finished. Then they can enter the crowd, which is risky in itself because the crowd is already aroused by Trump and has been known to rough up the journalists. But the journalists cannot approach the rope line, apparently for fear the mics can pick up what he says and what his followers say to him. These rules do not apply to Clinton and Sanders rallies, or those of the other Republican candidates, only Trump. Network executives claim that obeying such restriction of freedom of the press is the price of admission, and they swear, as CBS News Washington Bureau Chief Chris Isham rather shamefacedly claims, well, quote, We're continuing to push on that and a number of other fronts, close quote. Quoting Nancy Reagan for a change, just say no to covering him. Fox News is certainly part of the problem, although even Megyn Kelly, in her refusal to crumble under Trump's ongoing personal attacks, said at one point, quote, Trump cannot control the media, close quote. Well, Megyn, perhaps she meant that controlling the media was Roger Ailes' job, or, to go to the top, his boss, Rupert Murdoch. The suits. The big six corporate owners who control 90% of American media, including 70% of your cable viewing. I've listed them before on this program, and it's time to do so again. And each one I'm listing owns many more properties than I have time to name here. 1. Comcast, which owns NBC and MSNBC, among other properties. 2. Rupert Murdoch's News Corp, which owns Fox, Wall Street Journal, and the top-selling newspapers on 3 continents. 3. Disney, which owns ABC and ESPN. 4. Viacom, which owns MTV and BET. 5. Time Warner, which owns CNN, HBO, and Time Magazine. And 6. CBS, which also owns Showtime, the Smithsonian Channel, and NFL.com. 232 media executives control the information diet of 277 million Americans. And if you're comforting yourself that, well, there are now so many news outlets online to fall back on, think about how less than reliable the Internet can be, how rumor travels faster than fact online, and that many or most of the online news sites are owned by, for example, Time Warner or others of the same Big Six. For shame, for that matter, that the suits have allowed, even encouraged, journalists to play themselves in movies for some time now. That sends a message that blurs the boundaries between real news and fantasy entertainment, making it consciously or subconsciously harder for audiences to differentiate between reality shows and reality. People, this is reality. This is the United States presidential election. The impact cannot be overestimated. For shame, media suits. Listeners, perhaps we should start a Twitter campaign to tell Les Moonves and the other Big Five to stop sucking up to the psychotic demagogue who is Donald Trump, and let them know we demand our free press back. And now for my first guest. Christine Lahti is a well-known and celebrated American actor and film director. She has worked in film, television, and on Broadway. She was nominated for the Oscar for Best Supporting Actress for the 1984 film Swing Shift, and since then has done numerous other movies. For her directorial debut with the 1995 short film Lieberman in Love, she won the Academy Award for Best Live Action Short Film. She also has been on Broadway in The Heidi Chronicles and other plays. She's an 8-time Golden Globe nominee and 6-time Emmy Award nominee, and she won the Golden Globe for the TV movie No Place Like Home, and won a Golden Globe and an Emmy in 1998 for her role as Kate Austin in the CBS series Chicago Hope. She's also appeared, of course, in Law and Order, and now she's beginning a new career as a writer. Stay tuned. Christine, wonderful Christine, welcome to the program.
Thank you. I'm honored to be talking to you, Robin.
Well, I'm honored to be talking to you. I have been a real fan of your artistry for quite a few years. I mean, going back to the Heidi Chronicles in '89, Wendy Wasserstein, and then just followed you straight on through. I saw you on stage live with God of Carnage with Marcia Gay Harden, and you were just brilliant. And of course, the years in Chicago Hope and Law and Order. You are on stage and on film and on camera. To me, there's an integrity in the persona of whomever your choices are to play that has real integrity as a female human being, without any rhetoric or jargon. Just it's the best of feminism incarnated to me.
Oh, well, thank you. That was actually a very conscious choice on my part to choose roles whenever I could afford it. I mean, there were a couple times I had to just pay the rent and, dishwashing liquid commercials. But,
Of course, of course.
But mostly, it was really important to me. And you are, I think, partly, in a large way, actually responsible for that, Robin, because when I was in college in the late 60s, early 70s, I read the sisterhood anthologies, and they really changed my life. I mean, when I became a feminist in, I guess, early 70s really is when it started to grab hold of me inside my guts, not just an intellectual idea. I realized that as an artist, I had to be accountable. And if I'm going to put images out of women into the world, they had to be three-dimensional, complex women. And in those days, the way to do that was to insist upon no nudity. Mm-hmm. I thought, well, if I keep my clothes on, I have a better chance of playing somebody that has complexity, right?
Yes.
Because, right, that was just like a given.
Yes.
And it was just important to me to be able to have that kind of accountability as an artist and just hopefully portray women that were real, not always strong. I mean, I played a lot of women that started out, really maybe even feeling like they were victims, but they always had to have an arc where they found their strength. They had to have that. I could never play just a bimbo. Yeah.
And intelligence, and agency or striving for agency over their own lives,
Yes. Well, in fact, that's been my own personal journey my whole life, is striving for agency. And in fact, it's why I started writing.
Aha. Well, that brings us to right now, because you are doing an evening of readings of your own work that is moving toward a book or a presentation evening. Or tell us about this. This is very exciting.
Yeah. Well, first of all, the details of it. It's Joe's Pub, in New York City on April 8th. Friday, April 8th at 7 p.m. And it's a workshop still. Hopefully it'll be a one-woman show soon, but I've been developing these stories, writing these stories and developing them and performing them for a couple years. And this is the first time at Joe's Pub, so I'm really excited about it. To me, it's the big time in terms of this workshop. So, but I started writing because as an actress at the age of 65, I finally felt the weight of being basically a passive artist. Mm-hmm. Acting is, and I have directed, which is incredibly empowering, but as an actress, I've been dependent on mostly men hiring me, and there's such ageism in this industry, like there is in a lot, but especially in show business. Yes. So I was not working enough and really frustrated and feeling creatively just crazed because I wasn't finding an outlet. My daughter, who's 22 and a self-proclaimed radical intersectional feminist, and she's unbelievably empowered at the age of 22 in ways that I could never have dreamt to be, and I'm so inspired by her. But
love it.
Yeah, and she said, why aren't you writing your own stuff? Why are you being dependent on these other people to hire you? What are you doing, Mom? And I got inspired, and I started to write. Because I always thought, well, I'm not really entrepreneurial. I mean, I direct, but I'm just an actress, was the feeling I had. So anyway, I started to write, and I didn't know if I could write, but I just wrote and rewrote and worked with some really great teachers. And anyway, I have the collection of personal essays, creative nonfiction, I guess you call them. And I wrote them with the idea of performing them. Some of them are more performable than others, but anyway, I'm doing 6 of them at Joe's Pub on April 8th.
Wow. Well, I will be there agog, rapt. Not that's R-A-P-T, not W-R-A-P-P-E-D. Because you're speaking your own words. This is a Carol Gilligan moment. You're not speaking words that other people have written for you to say. You're speaking in your own voice.
It's true, and it is the scariest thing and most rewarding thing maybe I've ever done. I mean, I've spoken words of brilliant playwrights from Eugene O'Neill and Tennessee Williams and I mean and Wendy Watersbean, but this, I could always kind of hide behind a character, right?
Yes, yes.
They weren't my words. It wasn't my story.
Yes.
Now this is my story and my words, and it's as honest as I can possibly be. And at the age of 65, I find it's really much easier to be honest and have a sense of humor about all my imperfections.
Oh, yes.
Right?
Yes,
the
absolutely.
older we get, it's like it's easier to just laugh at ourselves.
You don't sweat the small stuff quite so much,
no,
you know,
no.
and you begin to trust your own voice a lot more. And
yes.
This is just really exciting. I will also, however, tell you a dirty little secret. Every time something has scared the hell out of me writing it,
that's right.
That's been the good stuff.
Exactly. And I also feel that this chapter of my life, if I'm not doing things creatively that scare the crap out of me,
yes,
then what's the point? Why am I doing it?
Exactly. And that's the fun, you know. I mean, and while writing is absolutely terrifying if one is really honest, which is the only way to be if you're going to really do it. While it's terrifying, it is also, I think, the best fun you can have sitting up. You know, because you've been a director, you've been an actor, you are still both, and now this. You're becoming a Renaissance woman, Christine. It's just that.
Well, I teach a lot of master classes to actors, young actors, and I tell the young actors, particularly the women, I say, you can't just be an actor. You must write, direct, act, and produce. Because there may be a time that you need to create your own stuff. So I want them to all start young and not wait till they're 65. How great
that they encounter somebody like you. And you're also politically active. You're one of the most principled feminists that are in the profession. People know they can always count on you, and you show up to add some star glamour to events of fundraisers and all the things that keep the women's movement going. So thank you for that. Thank you for everything that you do.
Thank you, Robin. I mean, I have to just say again that you taught me things like the idea that women could be sisters. I grew up thinking that, no, women were competition for the guy, right? That was the way I was taught that.
We were all taught that. That's right.
Yeah. But I mean, you and Gloria, Gloria's a good friend, and you really opened my eyes. It changed my life forever. And you'll see all my stories are about my often winding, stumbling path to finding agency. And I'm still finding it. And writing has given me so much of that, actually, later in life. And everything's about that in my life. Everything is seen through the lens of my feminism. My being a mother, my being a wife, my being a friend, my being an activist, an artist. It's all seen through the lens of what you helped me find. Well, and I cannot tell you how grateful I am for that.
Well, thank you. And thank you for all the brilliant work that you have done and are doing. And for this new adventure, I'm going to be there at Joe's Pub again, which it's April 8th for people in the New York area. It's Joe's Pub, in Manhattan, April 8th at 7:00. And you can go online and find tickets for it, because I'm sure it will be packed to the gills. But I would encourage people to get tickets soon. It is selling out. So I really want, as soon as they can, get on. You got it. The website and get those tickets. Yeah. Yeah. But thank you, and thank you for doing Women's Media Center Live today. Oh, my pleasure. I love the Women's Media Center and everything that you do. Thank you, Robin. It's time for a short break here at Women's Media Center Live. I'm Robin Morgan, and I'll be right back with a woman who makes robots that, believe me, you want to see, especially if you're in trouble. They help.
You're listening to Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan.
Welcome back. My next guest, Dr. Robin Murphy, is the director of the Center for Robot-Assisted Search and Rescue and the Center for Emergency Informatics at Texas A&M. She's the recipient of the 2014 ACM Eugene L. Lawler Award for Humanitarian Contributions within Computer Science and Informatics, and she's the author of the book Disaster Robotics on Artificial Intelligence, Robots, and Human-Robot Interaction. Dr. Robin Murphy, Robin to Robin, welcome to the program.
Thank you so much for having me here and for having such a great first name.
Yes, it is a good one, isn't it? You are a specialist in disaster robotics, which is an extremely new and important field. For people who don't have a grip on this, define it. Tell us what it is.
Well, disaster robotics is about using ground, aerial, or marine vehicles to assist responders, particularly in that first 2 weeks where they're trying to do the initial life-saving response and the immediate mitigation of the hazards, so that then other groups can come in and do the insurance adjustment, turn the power back on, that sort of thing. So it really focuses on small robots that these different response agencies can carry with them and deploy on demand as needed to get information that lets them see and act at a distance in real time.
This is so important. And your book, which we should definitely talk about, Disaster Robotics, is about 34 documented deployments of robots to such disasters as the World Trade Center collapse and Hurricane Katrina and the 2010 Haiti earthquake and the Deepwater Horizon spill and the Japanese earthquake in 2011. These are more and more they're being deployed, aren't they?
That is correct. The first robots were ground robots back in 2001 for the 9/11, the World Trade Center. And for years, people were using the small ground robots that had been developed for pipe inspection, because you don't use robots to replace people or what people can do or dogs can do now. You're using them as an extra to give them more capability. So you're using robots, ground robots, the size of a lunchbox to get into places people can't get in.
Wow.
Same thing with aerial vehicles. It's not so much to replace what the Civil Air Patrol does and things. It's to get up right next to a building and at low altitudes in areas that it's wildly unsafe to fly with a manual helicopter or can't be done with a plane.
Wow.
And then with marine, of course, you think about manual divers trying to go in deep, murky water where there's a lot of debris. Very risky, very hard to get into. So these are all assistant robots. They're not really there to replace people. They're like creating the fire trucks or the cell phones or the super-duper radios of the future.
Sure. Wow. What drew you to this particular field?
Well, it was 1995. Two things happened in 1995. One was the Kobe earthquake, huge catastrophe. And then in the United States, at the same time, we had the Oklahoma City bombing.
Right.
And the technology was going towards small ground robots. Everybody, including myself, was trying to get a piece of the action for what would later become Sojourner Truth, the little Mars rovers.
Yes.
And the thing was, can you make them smaller? Can you make them fit, be cheaper to deploy? Can you make them more workable in extreme environments? And as soon as you saw those two events, you went, oh, crap. This is an even harder environment than Mars. And it's a more important one to try to get these things to go to places, into the rubble, to help find survivors.
Wow, that's amazing. Have you found, it's beginning to change, but there's been a real problem about women in STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math fields. What has your experience been in terms of women and your field? Well,
women are very active in artificial intelligence for robotics. Less so in the hardware side, making them...
I'm sorry, I'm very irreverent, but that's because we're used to dealing with men. And so artificial intelligence is something that women are familiar with. Never mind me, go right ahead.
No, it's a joke among ourselves.
Oh,
we
well,
don't care
good.
about building the robots. I mean, if we wanted to, if I hear another guy say, well, I could never have a baby, and it's like, well, maybe you shouldn't. But, I'm going to build one. Instead, our joke is that we can have babies. We're not trying to create another creature. We're trying to make things that are smarter and more useful, that interact with people. One of our projects is how scary is it to have a robot with bright lights find you when you're trapped and in shock? And things. So how do these things interact with real people under these stressful conditions?
Oh, I love you.
So that's one idea thing about women. The other thing that we see, so very few people do field robotics. And one of my inspirations has been, believe it or not, Margaret Mead, that whole paradigm of participatory research.
Right.
To understand what the heck's needed here. It's just got to get in there. And it's worked both good news, bad news, and this gets back to our name scheme, Robin, is nobody can tell if I'm a guy or a girl.
Yes.
And certainly when I'm all padded up in foul weather gear and stuff, it's hard to tell what I am,
Right.
vaguely human at that point. But what we found with the original fire rescue teams that we started working with, I think if we had been guys, and most of my team is usually women, and they would have just said, yeah, go away now. But I think they felt kind of sorry for us and kind of proud, particularly of my women grad students. That these were like their nieces. They were smart women. They were trying to do something different.
Right.
And so they said, no, okay. And they tried to be a little more gentle about the fact that we had no clue. And to come to our training, you'll see that it's not like on TV, and it's not the way you expect disasters. And so that really got us in and to better understand the problems. And we continue to learn from the professionals and really reinforce that idea of participatory research. Get side by side and learn from the experts instead of saying, oh, look, this is smart and interesting. I bet this will solve all of your problems. Which is kind of hubris to think we would know their problems.
Yeah, well, one would think, but the thought that glaring lights approaching somebody buried in rubble, the approach of the disaster robot that is finding, that is something that you'd think would be a normal thought process, but hasn't been until the touch of women has entered the field, or so it seems to me.
And you're absolutely correct. I mean, nobody was thinking that way. And we saw it. Dr. Cindy Bethel at Mississippi State took that as her PhD thesis, showed that just regular people, their heartbeat goes up. Nobody wants something in their face.
Well, no.
And we have these reactions. And then another great woman, now a professor, Brittany Duncan, Dr. Duncan is at University of Nebraska-Lincoln. She discovered that people don't react to UAVs correctly. I mean, if you've got a UAV flying at you, one of these quadcopters, my husband calls them flying weed whackers of death. But people won't duck.
Explain to listeners what UAV stands for.
Unmanned aerial vehicle. Those little drones, we hate the term drone, by the way, because it sounds military and we're going to shoot people. But think of those little quadcopters you see. So you've got these blades going at a high speed, and they don't no longer like the little toys like they used to 15 years ago fall apart. They're super high strength carbon, so they're just going to whip up and people let it get way too close. It's like all of their normal "you're invading my space" issues
doesn't
suddenly
kick in.
Get wiped out. And
wow.
So that was an amazing discovery that she thought. But everybody's like, oh, let's make more and faster. And this is like, well, why don't we make them where they don't hurt anybody?
Yes.
It's from that hands-on experience.
It's such a different approach from a boys and their toys approach to how does this interact with humanity? Where is the wit in it? Where is the approach to collegiality in effect with robots? It's interesting because a number of pilot programs in educating women in computer science and trying to get women more involved in that, which is certainly related, have found that if you don't focus on the mechanical gears and wheels aspect that boys respond to, that girls respond more to, they want to change the world, they want to save somebody, there's an emotional aspect to it, which I think is a deeply affirmable one, and I wish more guys had too. And so maybe they'll learn it from people like you.
Well, I hope so. That's one of our educational missions. We, for 2 years, run a research experience for undergraduates called Computing for Disasters. And right now, we've just come back from Greece working with lifeguard assistant robots. And all of my students, our senior capstone design, are all working on projects related to this. And you can see the excitement, the idea of we're doing something valuable. We're not just doing startup stuff, see if that's going to stick. And I think the other thing is this is the time for women to get into science. So even if they never were interested in that, this is the time, because now the technology is mature enough that you don't have to screw around with one more time trying to, figure out this and hold together. The robots we use, because we use them in disasters, have to work. So they're commercially available, and we work with the manufacturers, and they do that part. Well, we have the fun, exciting part. I know other people think making stuff is it, of doing the software, making it more intelligent, seeing, observing how it's being used and where the bottlenecks are and what the next big problem is, and doing that kind of brainstorming. So this is really plays to our strengths.
Yeah, and it's really cool, too. It's exciting. It's awesome. It's really quite thrilling. Thank you for being you, Robin, and for your book, which is, again, listeners, called Disaster Robotics, in which she lays out all of her research into the problem, and it pulls together artificial intelligence and robotics and human-robot interaction. Thanks for the work that you do. Keep doing it. And thanks for being with us on Women's Media Center Live.
Thank you for having me, and thanks for being the role model you are, Robin.
And now it's time for our new little feature, We Won This. It's easy to get bummed out between the news of Trump and terror, or the terror of Trump, or any combination thereof. So We Won This is to remind us that we are, in fact, making strides. So, for openers, for the first time, the Century Club, a private club of arts and letters in New York, has elected a woman as its president. It's only taken 169 years, and Susan Morrison, the articles editor of the New Yorker magazine, now ascends to the peak of literary power in the association and in the clubby world of New York. I'm not a member of that club. I'm not a clubby type, but send her my congratulations. Also, for the first time in its 58-year history, NASA's astronaut class is 50% women. Yes. And Paula Johnson became the first African-American president of Wellesley College. So, we won this. And on a very serious note, the International Criminal Court convicted a Congolese politician, Jean-Pierre Bemba, of war crimes and crimes against humanity, finding him culpable for a devastating campaign of rape, murder, and torture in the Central African Republic in 2002 and 2003. This is because of pressure from human rights advocates and women's groups especially, the reason being that organized or mass rape is finally increasingly being recognized and prosecuted as a weapon of war, not a byproduct of it. Other international courts, including the UN tribunals for war crimes in the former Yugoslavia and in Rwanda, have issued convictions for rape as a war crime and a crime against humanity. In fact, the first jurist to do so was Judge Navanitha Pillay of South Africa when she was judge president of the Rwanda court. But this is the first time the International Criminal Court in The Hague has done so. We won this. Time for another quick break. I'm Robin Morgan. You're listening to Women's Media Center Live, but we'll return in just a moment with a most unusual and, it turns out, historic friendship between two women who were unlikely friends.
You're listening to Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan.
And we're back again. Dr. Patricia Bell Scott is Professor Emerita of Women's Studies and Human Development and Family Science at the University of Georgia. Her previous books include Life Notes, Personal Writings by Contemporary Black Women, Flat-Footed Truths, Telling Black Women's Lives, and Double Stitch, Black Women Write About Mothers and Daughters, which was a prize-winning book. And she's here today to talk about her new, important book, The Firebrand and the First Lady. Dr. Bell Scott, Patricia, welcome to the program.
Thank you so much for having me, Robin.
Thank you for being with us today. This is a really important book, and one for which I, among many women, am and will be personally grateful. Not only because it's extraordinary in its own right, in terms of the friendship between Pauli Murray and Eleanor Roosevelt, but because it brings the great Pauli Murray out of the shadows into the mainstream of history, which she deserves to be. The book is called The Firebrand and the First Lady, Portrait of a Friendship, Pauli Murray, Eleanor Roosevelt, and the Struggle for Social Justice. I'll say, wow. I mean, people don't know, and now they will, thanks to you and your scrupulous scholarship and your wonderful writing. They don't know about Pauli Murray. I mean, those of us who come out of the civil rights movement and the early days in the late 60s and 70s of the current feminist movement in the United States, of course, know about her because she was a principal strategist in preserving Title VII of the Civil Rights Act. She was a founder of NOW, National Organization for Women. She was so many things with the United Nations Commission on Human Rights. She chaired that. And she was the first African-American female Episcopal priest anywhere. But she has been sidelined. Was that because of her firebrandedness?
I think she has been lost until now, hopefully, for several reasons. I think, first of all, as you say, it was indeed the fact that she was always ahead of her time. She was always pushing boundaries. Yep. She was also impatient, so she suffered bureaucracies. She had trouble with bureaucracy.
You bet.
So what that meant is that when she was working with the NAACP on an issue, she would put the issue out, urge them to move forward, and if they didn't, she might step outside and work outside the institution.
Yeah.
And what that means is that when people would write the history of the civil rights movement or a particular issue, they would often seize upon the papers and focus on the institutional leaders. I think when we bow to Thurgood Marshall and Spotsworth Robinson and those men who get credit for the Brown decision, we also need to be bringing Pauli into the fold because they used her paper as background.
Well, of course. And of course, there was also garden variety sexism. What an amazing, amazing woman. And to tell the story of this woman when she was like 27 or 28, when she first wrote to Eleanor Roosevelt, pointing out that she was the girl who did not stand up when you passed through the social hall of Camp Terra during one of your visits in the winter of 34-35. And Miss Mills criticized me afterward, but I thought and still feel you are the sort of person who prefers to be accepted as a human being and not a human paragon. Well, I love that young woman.
Yes, and that young woman started out, whenever I talk to audiences about Pauli, many of whom do not know her, I like to start with a story from her childhood, and that is of Pauli as a 6-year-old sitting at the breakfast table with her grandparents. She was orphaned as a child, and her first complaint, she would describe it as her first complaint against discrimination. And what she did as a 6-year-old, she noticed her adoptive mother giving pancakes to people, and her grandfather got 3 and she got 1, and she turned to her aunt and said, Aunt Pauline, why do you give grandfather 3 pancakes and me only 1? Now, this is a 6-year-old. How do you explain that to a precocious 6-year-old in such a way that you do not appear to be privileging age,
right,
gender, status? So as a young child, very young child, she was challenging authority head on. She was calling out inequity, so that by the time she saw Eleanor, she was very impressed with the fact that Eleanor had appeared at this camp behind the wheel of her car. So here's the First Lady of the United States driving up with 2 passengers. She gets out of her car and immediately starts walking through the premises. The premises. And Polly is just stunned that she's obviously accessible, but Polly is also shy, and so she does not speak to Eleanor, and she remains seated, and she's peering over the corners and the top of her newspaper at the First Lady and noticing how tall she is, how casually she's dressed, how comfortably she seems, so that by the time that Polly, 4 years later, applies for admission to the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill, she remembers seeing Eleanor, and as she folds this protest letter, which is 3 pages, single-spaced typed, to Franklin Roosevelt, challenging him on the UNC.
Racism, really.
Racism. Because Polly is denied admission because she's black.
Right.
So she remembers Eleanor, and she sends her a copy of the letter with a cover note. And you've just read that cover note. And it obviously gets the First Lady's attention. And that begins a correspondence and a friendship that will last for 28 years until Eleanor dies in 1962. And I also try to argue in the book that the friendship actually lives beyond that, because Polly continues to carry this memory forward in her work until her own death in 1985.
Yes, yes. Some of this overlaps period that I lived and I thought I knew about, but I learned all sorts of things that just blew me away. I mean, first of all, both Polly and you are very generous to Eleanor Roosevelt. And that's a strange thing to hear myself saying, but I got royally pissed off at Eleanor a number of times in this book, because we all sort of accept the image of her as going as far as she could, given her time, given her place, given her role. We wouldn't, in a sense, have the United Nations without her. So many things, but to have to struggle with her to get her support on board for an anti-lynching law made me crazy.
Yes. Well, one of the things that I was interested to find out, because once I decided that I wanted to understand this friendship, here are 2 women, one the granddaughter of a mixed race slave, the other the descendant of the Roosevelts, whose ancestry entitled her to membership in the Daughters of the Revolution. I was very interested to know what drew these 2 women together.
Hell yeah!
How did they maintain this relationship? How did they sustain it? What did they get from it? How did they grow?
Right.
That they had a lot in common. From something as simple as the first given name, Anna, but that they were both child orphans. They both lost parents at an early age. They were both innately shy, but learned to move beyond that, to be outspoken. And they had a tremendous impact on each other, so that by the time that Eleanor died, by the last decade of her life, she had moved from being the woman who had written back to Polly in response to the letter you read to in which she said, I understand what you're saying, but we have to be patient. We have to go slow.
Take it slow.
Take it slow. She had moved from that position to publicly supporting and going to workshops, disobeying segregation laws herself in support of civil rights activists in the 60s.
Yeah.
And Polly, who began the friendship as part of the radical left, commit herself to working inside bureaucracies as much as she could stand.
As much as she could stand, yes.
So what that meant was, that's the reason by the time you see Paulie,
right.
She is trying to work within now.
Yes, she is.
And that she had a tough time.
But her irritation and grit at doing so was evident. It was like, do I really have to suffer these fools gladly? Oh well.
Exactly. And then she committed herself to working in what is perhaps one of the most intractable institutions, and by that I mean the church.
She had so many firsts and the scars to prove it in so many areas, but there's this extraordinary moving passage where you say, you write, the elaborate lectern behind which Murray stood, this is at her, a month after her ordination when she celebrated her first Eucharist, the lectern bore the name of her slave-holding great-aunt, Mary Ruffin Smith, who had bequeathed a portion of her inheritance to the Episcopal Diocese of North Carolina, and the fragile Bible that Murray held was a treasured gift from Smith to her niece, Murray's grandmother, Cornelia, whose baptism as one of Smith's, quote, 5 servant children, close quote, was recorded in 1858 in the church registry. I mean, and the purple ribbon and dried flowers that she used as a Bible bookmark had come with the bouquet that Eleanor had sent 33 years earlier when Murray graduated from Howard University School of Law. What an amazing combination of symbolic realities in that one woman standing at that one lectern.
Yes. She tried to bring all of her ancestors into that moment, and among them she included Eleanor.
Yes, she did.
So I would like to argue that this friendship allowed them to become the leaders we know them as. And
I think you've proved that point unarguably in this book. To me, the influence goes much more from Paulie to Eleanor, although clearly Eleanor's relationship with Paulie was very dear to her. She defended Eleanor as a feminist when some people said Eleanor wasn't a feminist. And so the love and friendship between these women is itself very moving. But I'm so grateful that Paulie is out of the shadows. I cannot thank you enough. The book is called The Firebrand and the First Lady, Portrait of a Friendship, Paulie Murray, Eleanor Roosevelt, and the Struggle for Social Justice by Dr. Patricia Bell Scott. Patricia, thank you again for doing this book. I know it took years of squinting at small print and illegible print and lots of other research, and it's worth every second of it. Bless you for doing this.
Thank you so much, Robin.
We have to take one more quick pause here at Women's Media Center Live. I'm Robin Morgan, and I will return immediately almost with some fighting words.
You're listening to Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan.
Welcome back again, in time for some fighting words. Let's take a moment to talk about authenticity, what Hillary Rodham Clinton is accused of not having. Apparently, Senator Sanders has authenticity all over the place, although his campaign recently claimed he's lost only in states where he didn't compete. Rachel Maddow called the campaign out for inaccuracy on that one, but as of this moment, they have yet to walk the statement back. But it seems to me authentic when a candidate looks straight at a voter and slowly, quietly answers a question saying, well, you know, this campaigning and all is not easy for me. I look at Bill or at the president and I'm in awe at how good they're at it. I know I'm not, but I'm trying to learn. What I am good at is the work itself, the fine-tuning of policies, really listening to constituents, working across the aisle, getting it done. I hope that's enough. It seems to me that that's a rare moment of authenticity from any candidate in history. It's also a characteristic of the way women cross-culturally govern, less concerned with writing white papers and posturing than with getting a bowl of rice into a hungry child's hands now. But hey, do enough people care about real authenticity when excitement and hatred are in the air? Which brings us to what we suspected it would come down to, the elections as a fight club over manhood. The seeming death agonies of the GOP are now a competition over which guy has the biggest organs, whose wife is the sexiest, whose testosterone is the most toxic, and, in other words, who is the most alpha male. I've decided not to repeat Donald Trump's hideous comments about women so as not to give them further airtime. They're available online. There's even an ad that went viral in which women read them into the camera while looking appalled. Trump's statement that men should treat women like dirt says it all, for that matter. On the other side, we're offered Ted Cruz, who calls on Trump to debate like a man, and who, remember, was willing to shut down the government in order to defund Planned Parenthood for its defense of a woman's right to her own reproductive and sexual choices. We're offered Ted Cruz as our defender. Trump and Cruz, like opposing armies who rape the women they each see as belonging to the other side as a means of communicating between themselves, Trump and Cruz act as if they are the nouns and women are the verbs by which they communicate. It's worth recalling, by the way, that the first act of the National Socialist Party in Germany in the 1930s in coming to power was to outlaw abortion for, quote, Aryan, close quote, women. Control the family, and you control the state. The trouble with using hyperbole is that it spoils terms for later use when they really are apt or even understated. In the 1960s and 70s, we compared Nixonian tactics to those of the Nazis. Now, according to Vanity Fair, when Trump's ex-wife Ivana claims that Trump kept a book of Hitler's speeches on his bedside table, now when Ted Cruz calls for carpet bombing and hires former Iran-Contra guys as his foreign policy advisors, Trump brags he's his own advisor, now we are beggared for the right analogy. Well, put the Nazi analogy on hold for the moment, and let's quote Lincoln instead, who coined the word mobocratic to describe the process of demagogues who invoke the worst in the populace. Mobocratic. And at the heart of the demagogue is the patriarch. This election bodes to be a flat-out engagement between the inclusive vision, practical idealism, and dynamic intelligence of feminist energies, versus a politics eliciting the fear, anger, hatred, willful ignorance, compartmentalization, and exclusion that characterize patriarchy. All those angry white guys out there saluting Trump yet willing to back Cruz, they're terrified that everything's changing around them. They're frightened of facts, climate change, shifting U.S. demographics, gay people. They're threatened by the geopolitical realities of fuel, globalization, the IT revolution, people with different melanin content in their skins, and most of all, they're afraid of losing the patriarchy in their own daily lives, control of their wives, daughters, sisters, employees, afraid of losing what they'd been sold as manhood. This is their last stand, and they know it. That also makes them dangerous. This is shaping up to be an historic contest in which the first candidate in American history to openly embrace feminist vision, style, and politics from inside the women's movement will be the person to stand between democracy and authoritarianism, the pant-suited champion fighting to preserve our republic against a comic strip-level villain embodying patriarchy at its most foul and grotesque. If you're not involved in these elections yet, please get involved now. It's not too early to start acting this very moment. Our lives, our republic, the planet itself depends on it. No hyperbole. And the whole world is watching. And that's it for today. This program is syndicated, but if you can't find the broadcast on a radio station in your area, you can always visit us at WMClive.com. There you can find the show, plus the archive of all our previous episodes. And we're at iTunes worldwide. There you can stream, download, and subscribe to the show's podcast. Also, be sure to find WMC Live on Facebook and Twitter. Portions of this program were taped earlier. Opinions expressed here do not necessarily represent the WMC. Here's the family for Women's Media Center Live. Regina K. Scully is our founding sponsor. Julie Burton, Women's Media Center President, is executive producer. And I'm Robin Morgan, your producer and host. Thank you for being with us. Don't forget to join us next week right here on Women's Media Center Live.
For the smartest talk about news, politics, sex, books, religion, race, and more, tune your radio to Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan. Audacious, witty, provocative, informative, and fun. It's Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan on WMCLive.com. Talk radio with a brain.